Welcome to Culture on I-24 News. I'm Oded Grober. Thanks so much for joining me. Today on our show, we'll have Radiolab's Robert Krulwich in the studio to talk about his show, Radio and Storytelling. And we'll check up on Pretty Woman, 25 years old this week. Still doesn't look a day over 20. We begin with Robert Krulwich, who is an award-winning journalist with a decades-long career. For the past 10 years, he's been a science correspondent for American National Public Radio, hosting and editing the show Nova Science Now. In recent years, he's best known for hosting, along with Jed Abumrad, the hit show Radiolab, a Peabody Award-winning radio program on NPR. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome him to the studio. Thanks for coming in, Robert.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with Radiolab. Radiolab has a very unique sound to it, a very, very specific style. I'm curious if that was something that was found along the way, or did someone have a very clear vision of what they wanted and then just found a way to do it?
I met a kid. He was a kid. He was like 27 years younger than me. Mm-hmm. And we became very friendly. He's still 27 years younger than me. That's how these things go. And we were just friendly because he had gone to the same college I'd gone to. His first job was the same first job I had. His second job was the same second job I had. So I said to him, I was at ABC News at the time. He came just to do a messenger thing. And we just got talking. And about 9 months later, he handed me, we had just been breakfasting, really. Mm-hmm. He handed me a cassette of something he was working on, and I just listened to it. And what I heard, to answer your question, was something I thought that was completely new in the world. This guy, who had wanted to be a scorer for films and had, during the big boom for right after he graduated college, he'd gotten a silly job, but someone asked him to do that, and he was kind of terrible at it. Okay. But it turned out that when it came to spoken word stuff, he had figured out by himself a way to score, to orchestrate the sound of an idea. So if I said to you, Jack and Jill is going up a hill, I guess, you'd think, well, that's about locomotion, it's a little bit about elevation, but it's just words, really. Right. But he figured out a way to score underneath the words so elegantly that you could almost hear the ideas a little clearer and a little louder. I said to him, I think instead of me telling you stuff, I think I'd like to work with you. So we went to a radio station.
And we're talking about Jad here.
This is Jad Abumrad, yeah. And we went to I told the station manager at the public radio station in New York City, I said, I think you have a genius in the basement. So can we have the studio from 6:30 in the morning till 8:30 in the morning? We will be gone before anybody else gets here. And we'll just play together for about a year. And you just have to never talk to us, don't pay us, don't bother us, don't advise us. We'll just come and give you something. You can throw it out the window or put it on the air. And about 9 months later, we gave her 5 hours of what is now pretty close to the program that people like and hear. And it was a kind of jazz-like collaboration between the two of us. But it's really Jed Abumrad's invention that I just kind of like backed, sort of.
Well, it certainly works, and also the types of stories that you bring on the show is something quite unique. And how do you find these stories? I mean, are they just out there?
Yeah, they're just out there. It requires a certain kind of person. So like in the last 48 hours, I've gotten very interested, I don't know why, in snail sex. Snails are hermaphrodites. So each individual snail is both a boy and a girl. It has a penis and also has a little package of eggs. So the snail simultaneously wants to poke other snails because it has that part of it, but it also wants to protect its eggs against. So if a snail meets a second snail, and the second snail maybe has a cold, the first snail may say, the bottom of me wants to do the poking, but the top of me is a little worried about that cold. And then meanwhile, the other snail is perhaps having a confounding set of situations. And we thought to ourselves, when I was just talking to Jed before I came here, I said, like, isn't it interesting? Snails are really a great example of why it's so simple to be a mammal. Like we have, the gender is all in one body or the other body. It's all pretty clear. But when snails have sex, it must be Well, I have no idea whether any of this is true, but it must be a terrible headache.
You put yourself in the snail's place.
You put yourself in the snail's place. And, I just do that all the time. So it's very easy.
And when do you know that it would be a good story to put on the air? I mean, can we expect the snail story to be on the air soon?
I'm pretty sure that it will, but that doesn't mean that it will. What has to happen is the snail sex story has to get some friends. So there has to be some other kind of gender confusions or some other kinds of stories that sort of share the spirit of the first story. Right. If you get 2, you're on your way. If you get 3, you're probably a program. Okay. If you get 4, you're like
work on a program.
It depends. Some of them go on in 2 weeks, and some of them take 2 years. So at any given moment, there's like 7 or 9 of them up going right, as we go. So.
Part of the challenge is to bring a story that's either technological or scientific and give it some human context.
Yes.
And I'm curious if you ever found a story that you weren't able to find the way to tell it. If there was some technological or scientific thing that you thought was fascinating, but you couldn't find the way to serve it to the listener.
There was, in Nova, it almost killed me. There is something, it's a genetic story, and it involves a very, very complicated action that is found in bacteria, which allows bacteria to cancel a gene, or to simply block a gene.
Okay.
And I decided, and this is a natural system, so a gene that is puffing along and doing whatever it's due can be shut off by the most simple organism, something that's just in your stomach.
Right.
And I said, I'd like us to describe that. I tried what we call nature porn, which is whales coming beautifully out of the ocean, seagulls, and things that you just like drop your jaw to look at. I tried animation. I tried just simple, clean prose. I tried talking straight to camera. I then combined all these things, and I thought to myself, I am not going to make it. It was 13 and a half minutes long. It actually ended up running, and it won all kinds of awards. And when the guy who discovered this won the Nobel Prize, and all these reporters around the world said, "What did you just discover?" He said, "Well, there's a guy in America that figured it out." So I had a lot of people asking me.
This is your idea of failure.
Well, yes, because it was good. It was good, but I didn't think it really worked. I thought it was almost a headache. And what we like to do, which is really important to us, is we don't want our listeners to be people who love science necessarily, or who have gotten great grades, or who are academics. We just want you to be in your life, and you've never thought about snail sex ever. But we want to make you stop where you live and think, wait a second, and be able to understand what we're talking about. Yeah. So our system is clumsy. The two of us argue about what we've just heard. We ask silly questions to very, very smart people.
I guess that's why I like the show.
Right. I think it's meant to describe and to demonstrate what it's like to be a curious person without a whole lot of studying.
Over the years, because you've been around for a while, telling stories, how has storytelling changed over the years?
I don't think it has, really. I think there are fashions all the time. So when I started, news people were very authoritative. So they spoke around here. They spoke in the active voice. One never had one's hair combed. I combed my hair. Sentences were short, simple, direct, and your general feeling was that this guy knows what he's talking about.
Right.
And there was, I think, a worry on the part of the broadcasting community that you didn't dare ever be dumb or ask.
Right.
And now I think what's happened over the last 40 years or so is the style of asking, answering, and telling stories has loosened up quite a bit. And newscasters and reporters are willing to show their soft side, sometimes can be puzzled, and the form is more friendly, I think, than it used to be.
And do you think that radio in general is having a sort of resurgence nowadays? I mean, with the success of
radio anymore. But that
Podcasts?
thing, no, it's like listening.
Like spoken.
I don't know. If you, from the audience point of view, it's listening as opposed to watching. From the doer's point of view, I guess, what is it? It's called making noise, I guess, and not pictures. The making noise people or the listeners are having a kind of party for sure.
Yeah. And you think it's temporary?
I think it was a hip-hop thing, maybe, because music, which was very melodic for a long time, suddenly became about spoken word, poetry, internal rhymes, dense rhyming.
And if you listen to an idea more than just a melody?
If you listen to Eminem, it's, the first time through, it's actually, you have to listen pretty closely to understand. And I think both the way the music was going and the way these devices were going, you can now, put a television or a radio is an object that is at a remove from you. So you have like 6 feet between you and it, or the window is open and it's coming in the car. Once you start putting buds in your ear, the person who's talking is in your body.
Your head.
Yeah,
right,
so they have a authorial command that is kind of, having been on television for 23 years.
Exactly.
I really like this. Like, I'm in your body? That's pretty good. And I also, if I use painterly words and I say, okay, let's say that you're on the top of a mountain. It's a beautiful day, and there's a little green cottage. On television, I'd have to paint the mountain, put on the cottage. Certainly 10% of the people say, that's not a mountain, I think that's a hill. And now they're thinking about something else. But when I use the painterly words and you paint with me, what you don't realize is you've just become my co-author.
Yeah.
And we're doing this together. Yeah. That allows you to expand, because we're doing this together, the openness and the grandness of the venture becomes bigger. It's just bigger. It's
so you
bigger
think it's here to stay?
Oh, well, talking and listening is not exactly going anywhere. No, it's not going anywhere. But I think because it's so portable, what will happen is in the next 15 years, when you put on your watch or you take your phone, it's already happened when you put on your eyeglasses, there will not only be sounds coming to you, but there'll probably be pictures. And so it'll be back again. Yeah. And I think that reporters going forward are going to have to know how to draw and design and speak and edit. So you're going to have to be all these things. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing.
It's just good that we're doing it now and not in the future.
Yes.
Robert, I could keep going forever, but unfortunately we've run out of time. Okay. Thanks so much.
It's happened like lightning, this interview. Okay. Thank you.
In a moment, we'll celebrate the 25th anniversary of Pretty Woman, but first, our cultural recommendation for the day.
Two legendary artists and one exhibition. Works by Pablo Picasso and Salvador Dali are on display at the Picasso Museum in Barcelona. 78 of their works are displayed for the first time, giving focus to the link between both painters. Picasso and Dali were two master artists, both Spanish, both exploring non-traditional forms of expression, and they even knew each other. However, in the mid-1930s, as Hitler and Mussolini advanced, fascist politics and the Spanish Civil War erupted, and the artists diverged. The exhibition invokes other common features, such as the use of collages, surrealism, the influences of the Civil War, and their mutual dialogue with the work of Diego Velázquez, another great figure of Spanish art.
Now it's time for Shachar Peled's segment, Off Screen.
Hi, Oded.
You're a Pretty Woman.
Oh, thank you. Well, Disney's live-action Cinderella was released last week, but the real Cinderella fantasy took place 25 years ago, of course, with Pretty Woman's release, also by Disney, by the way. Not many people know that. The tale of a wealthy businessman falling in love with a hooker.
With a heart of gold.
Yes, but it's still a great Cinderella fantasy.
The most original story ever told.
Well, beloved up until today, and a happy reunion was organized actually by NBC, and interesting behind the scenes were revealed there. So it turns out that before Gary Marshall, the director, the famous rom-com director, joined the production, the original screenplay was called 3000, and it was actually a very dark script about drug abuse and prostitution, with a very dark ending. Richard Gere's character throwing Julia Roberts out of the driving car with money and driving away. 3000, of course, a reference to the money she got
right.
paid.
So much of that stayed in the film.
No, so well, everything changed when Gary Marshall joined, and it became this romantic comedy. And I don't think it was a huge mistake, because they did leave in the fact that this was a modern twist at the time, the 90s, that she also rescues him. A line from the movie. This is something that was very interesting to see, and things that were kept from the script were, for example, was the financial masterminds at the time that were taking apart companies, American companies, as Richard Gere's character does, selling them piece by piece. It was a difficult time for American economy, and also it does deal, of course, with prostitution and money. These are things that were left in this film. Julia Roberts, only 21 years old, was the first to be cast, and Richard Gere said several times no thank you until he met her in person, and he mentions the legs, as we can see.
Although we should point out,
what
that's not her body.
That's not her body, of course, it's known.
That's a known fact.
Yes, but he said that once he met her, her charisma, the chemistry between them is what convinced him to join.
It certainly worked. Thanks so much, Ahal.
Thank you.
That's it from us for today. I hope you enjoyed our show. We'll be back tomorrow with another one, so please be sure to join us again.